quick, picture a caveman smoking. Got it? A hairy guy in a fur, puffing on a little cigarette outside his cave. Yeah, that never happened. But the real story is so much weirder because humans have been chasing a good plant buzz for at least 12,000 years. 12,000. That's older than the pyramids, older than writing, older than the wheel. But here's the twist that drives archaeologists a little insane. Proving that somebody actually smoked is shockingly, ridiculously hard. And the reason why is honestly kind of hilarious. So let's find out. Did ancient humans really know how to smoke? And how on earth do you catch a smoker who died 2,000 years before your grandma was born? Let's start in the Utah desert, at a place called the Wishbone Site. About 12,300 years ago, a small group of Ice Age hunters sat around a campfire, and these were not casual campers. One of their spear points still had blood on it, from a mammoth or a mastodon. The test can't tell those two apart, which, honestly, fair. So picture it. You have just taken down a literal elephant. You are exhausted. And what do you reach for to unwind after a long day of mammoth? Tobacco. In the ashes of that campfire, scientists found 4 tiny charred tobacco seeds. 12,300 years old. The oldest sign of humans using tobacco anywhere on the planet. That is thousands of years before anyone carved a pipe. Before Egypt, before the pyramids, a mammoth hunter, apparently, had a tobacco habit. But, and this is basically the whole episode in one word, but, those seeds do not prove anyone smoked. They probably chewed the tobacco, like the world's grimmest breath mint. And this is the problem that haunts the entire story. Burning a plant is easy to spot. Proving a human actually pulled that smoke into their lungs, almost impossible. A pile of ancient ash just says, something burned here. It does not say, and then a guy named Greg inhaled it and coughed for a solid minute. So how do you ever prove it? You need chemistry. You need a machine called a mass spectrometer, which is basically the world's most patient narc. This machine can sniff out a single speck of nicotine left on an ancient pipe from a smoke break that ended 2,000 years ago. The smoker got away. The evidence did not. The best proof of all is dental plaque. That gunk your dentist scrapes off your teeth? It hardens like cement, it traps chemicals, and it can rat you out for smoking thousands of years later. There is just one tragic catch. When archaeologists clean an old skull, they often brush that plaque right off. They are literally scrubbing away the evidence. The perfect crime, solved by nobody. Okay, so when do we get our first real, provable smoker? For that, we travel to Alabama, about 3,600 years ago. There, someone carved a smoking tube out of stone, decorated it with little circles and zigzags, and used it a lot. And thousands of years later, that machine found nicotine still hiding inside. That carved stone tube is the oldest smoking device we can chemically prove held tobacco. Not a guess, not a maybe. An actual, confirmed, ancient pipe. But if you want the single greatest ancient smoke session ever discovered, you have to climb a mountain. Specifically, a cemetery, nearly 2 miles up in the Pamir Mountains of western China. About 2,500 years ago, mourners gathered up there for a funeral, and they brought wooden bowls filled with hot, glowing stones. Then they threw cannabis onto the stones and let the smoke fill the air. A funeral, a mountaintop, and a giant cloud of weed. This is a real thing that genuinely happened. And when scientists tested those bowls, the inside, the part that actually held the smoke, was coated in the chemical fingerprint of THC, the stuff that gets you high. The outside of the bowl? Nothing. That is how you know the smoke was the whole point. This is the oldest confirmed case of humans burning cannabis specifically to get high. 2,500 years ago. At a funeral. On a mountain. Respect. And here is the kicker. That cannabis was unusually strong. Way more THC than the wild plants growing nearby. Ancient people, possibly, with a taste for the good stuff. Now, scientists are careful here. Maybe they were growing stronger plants on purpose. Or maybe the harsh mountain air just stressed the plants into extra THC. We honestly don't know. But either way, potent funeral weed. Which brings us to a nosy Greek named Herodotus. The world's first travel blogger, writing at pretty much the same time, he described a people called the Scythians, who would sit inside a small closed tent, throw hemp onto red-hot stones, and, in his words, howl with joy. Basically, the world's first hotbox. Herodotus wrote it all down like a glowing 5-star review, and for over 2,000 years, everyone assumed he just made it up. Because, come on, a A tent full of screaming, delighted people, high on plant smoke? Sounds like a tall tale. Poor Herodotus, called a liar for 2,000 years. And then, in the frozen tombs of Siberia, archaeologists dug up the receipts. Little tent frames, bowls with scorched stones, and charred hemp seeds. He had been telling the truth the entire time. So the ancient world was absolutely smoking cannabis, no question. But now I have to bust a few myths, because the internet is a confident liar. Myth number 1. The ancient Egyptians smoked tobacco. Nope. Impossible. Tobacco is an American plant. It did not reach the Old World until after 1492. The pharaohs never had a puff. Myth number 2. Some famous mummies supposedly tested positive for tobacco and cocaine, proving ancient trips across the Atlantic. That was a lab error. Contamination. No pharaoh was secretly doing lines. Myth number 3. Cavemen smoked. Sort of, but not really. Neanderthals did breathe in smoke because they sat right next to campfires. One even had a painkiller plant on his teeth. But that is smoky air and medicine, not a Neanderthal lighting up for fun. Now, for pure chaos, nobody beats the ancient Americas. Because once they got serious about tobacco, they got extremely weird about tobacco. First, their tobacco was terrifying. The strong, ancient stuff could hit around 9% nicotine. Your average cigarette today is 1 to 3. Theirs was a plant built to knock you flat and show you visions. The Maya loved it so much, they had a smoking god. On a temple wall, there is a carving of an old underworld deity, puffing away on a big fat cigar, 1,300 years ago. They kept their tobacco in little jars, and on one jar, they actually wrote, and I quote, "the home of its tobacco." Then modern scientists tested it, and, yep, tobacco. The label was correct. Ancient packaging, verified. But they did not just smoke it, they also drank it, brewed into a liquid. And, according to scholars squinting at some very bold ancient pottery, they may have taken it the other way. As an enema. With a syringe. We are going to keep moving. And the Aztecs took it the furthest of all. To them, tobacco wasn't just sacred. One of their goddesses was said to literally be tobacco. Her actual body was the plant. That is next-level brand loyalty. But the fact that got me? It comes from a tiny grave in northern Chile, about 2,400 years ago. Scientists tested a newborn baby and found nicotine in its hair. A newborn, who never smoked a thing in its short life. So where did it come from? From mom. Its mother was such a heavy smoker that the nicotine passed into the baby before it was even born. Which means secondhand smoke is not a modern problem. It is at least 24 centuries old. The relative who fills the whole room with smoke while everyone quietly suffers. Congratulations. That is one of humanity's oldest and most annoying traditions. So let's put the whole thing together. Did ancient humans know how to smoke? Oh, absolutely. 12,000 years ago, mammoth hunters were chewing tobacco. 3,600 years ago, someone in Alabama had a carved stone pipe. 2,500 years ago, mourners were hotboxing funerals on a mountain. Scythians were howling with joy in smoke tents. And a baby in Chile was already breathing secondhand fumes. The honest truth is that proving any single ancient person inhaled is really hard. But the pattern is impossible to miss. Wherever there were humans and interesting plants, somebody, eventually, set them on fire and breathed them in. Because that might be the most human thing of all. Hand us any plant, and we will try to smoke it, chew it, brew it, or inhale it. Frequently all four. Our ancestors were not primitive. They were curious, a little reckless, and wildly willing to experiment. Exactly like us, just with better mountains and scarier tobacco. So the next time somebody tells you smoking is a modern habit, you can smile and say, "Buddy, we have been at this since the mammoths." If your very old, very curious brain enjoyed that, do your ancestors proud and hit subscribe. This is Truth Explorer, where the truth is always weirder than they taught you. See you next time.